welcome to the latest episode of Word on Snakevine. I'm Ross Deacon, and we are here to talk to you today about venomous research, snakebite initiatives, and venomous animal conservation going on all the way around the world. Today, I have joining me
Tim.
And Ahmed.
Tim always sounds very weird when he says his name.
Really?
Yeah.
It's the Swiss side.
I think it's the Swiss part, yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for you all joining us today on Word on Snakevine today. And joining us for another episode. Today we'll be talking about how we as hosts got into venomous and the venomous hobby or into research, and also a little bit more about our collections, a little bit of what we've done in the hobby or what we're trying to do, and also to talk around little bits about maybe talk to a little bit more about how venom extractions are done within the venomous snake research. Research, and I've lost my words again. This happens too regularly for venomous research. So I think we'll start off with Tim and how you got into venomous snakes. Obviously, you're the youngest. I've said this now without realising how old Ed is. But Tim, you're the youngest, and you probably started in venomous younger than me and Ed, or at least a very similar age to Ed, at least. So how did you actually get into venomous? So moving from the non-venomous to the venomous, and why did you do that?
Yeah, so my starting venomous keeping was quite accidentally, I think. I got interested in venomous snakes in high school. We have a different school system, so I just say high school. I was always interested. Actually, I lost my interest in snake in my teens. So like from 13 to 17, I didn't really like snakes at all. I was into lizard, geckos, frogs, and all that kind of stuff. But I just didn't want snakes. Keep snakes. So I had my corn snakes, but that was all. And then I kind of started getting interested in venomous species. I did a little paper on Vipera amordutis. I don't know how to pronounce it in English, like the horned viper.
Amodites.
Amodites.
Yes, yeah. It's actually one of my favourite species. I'm waiting for a friend to breed his. He's got some. I think he's got some Austrian locality, and they're absolutely stunning. Really good contrast animals. They're beautiful, but they're one of the bigger localities as well, which I quite like. But he actually shout out to Lucas Rosen because his enclosures are absolutely incredible. So shout out to him. He was a Swedish guy. But yeah, anyway, carry on.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I did that little amateur paper, and I kind of like compared different localities with the Rufoi subspecies. That doesn't exist anymore, but I kind of did the comparison between other subspecies and the Rufoi. I think that's the South Tyrol. I don't know how to pronounce that either in English. The one from Austria and Italy, like on the border, you know. So
I'm sure Russell will be able to chime in and tell you.
So I just keep going until you correct me.
Yeah, just keep going. My brain's racking. I'm trying to think what you mean, but once I Google it, but that would make me look stupid.
Do Google it. But... Yeah. So after that, I kind of gained again interest in snakes, and especially in venomous snakes, and I started training. And then really soon after that, I went to Thailand for another school project, like my thesis to at the end of high school. I went to Thailand to the Queen Sawapa Memorial Institute. There at the snake farm, I did a training for 1 month, and then I handled king cobras, Naja, Kauthia, countless other stuff. And after that, I decided, I think I want some venomous species for myself. And I started with Pseudachis colletti, a small one from Roger as well. And after that, it did continue to grow, not rapidly, but it's expanding slowly but steadily. So yeah,
you say slowly. You've got quite a few now, to be fair.
No, just 13.
Just 13.
Just 13.
Yeah, like in our hobby, 13 is nothing. You look at Nick or other people. I like Roger. Roger has like 150 snakes. I think that's a decent collection, but 13 snakes is nothing.
I know it's nothing, but if you're doing it correctly and you've got the right size enclosures, you're creating a right environment, that's a lot of animals. Like 13 is quite a big number, actually.
Yeah. It could be more, but I'm kind of restricted in space and in patience of my girlfriend and my mother.
I'd say we all know that, but my wife's quite accommodating. She's very accepting of the whole situation, so she's effectively just.
She resigned.
Yeah, but she didn't necessarily resign. I don't have a lot of space. I'm like you, I don't have a lot of space. So she knows that I live within my means. Incidentally, Vipera amidites rufoi, which is that locality, are now just Vipera amidites.
Yeah.
So they've been added in 2009.
Yeah, so I did that little paper about the rufoi, and I just kind of compared it with scale counts and coloration and pattern to other subspecies, and kind of just drew my conclusion that yes, rufoi is a genuine subspecies, and it should be considered as such. And that was my conclusion for my paper. Yeah, I always was a great scientist.
Well, you're now
a medic. Yeah.
Yeah. So
you are kind of okay at science. At least anatomy. I don't care about anything else as long as you can keep me alive for some.
Yeah.
I think I can do that.
I'm okay with that. So you were saying a little bit more about you went to Thailand, and now what age were you when you went to Thailand? And can you tell us a little bit more about that experience?
Oh yes, that was in 2015. Then I was 18, I think. Yeah, that was with 18. So and after that, still at age 18, I got my first venomous snake. So I started as soon as it was legally possible. Yeah, and now I'm 22, and 13 snakes, going strong. I'm kind of striving for, better accommodating them, having more natural enclosures now. Since I met you, Ross, I kind of got away from just adding more animals to caring better for the ones I already have. So you got quite a good impact on me, I must say.
Oh, don't say that. My head will grow. No.
That sounds like I'm a terrible keeper, but I'm not. I did keep them quite good, actually, even before I met you. Just it's improving.
Expanded.
Well, this is, and I think that I've had a few people say it to me recently, and I'm not the first person to do it, and I won't be the last person to do it. I'll be the first person to push it, or to push at least understanding why you're keeping it in a naturalistic way. But I'm happy that I've helped some people at least realise that maybe an animal needs a little bit more than the basics of what the hobby naturally gives. And I find as well, it kind of leads you on to kind of a little bit of husbandry, but it kind of leads you on as well that actually, if you look at it, there's a lot of venomous snakes that are highly, are on the verge of being in too small enclosures, not enough enrichment. And it's simple things like, I know, Ed, we've spoken about how to do enrichment at Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine and stuff. and how simple, like a simple climbing frame inside of a tub, could make a massive difference to those animals' lives. Changing
definitely.
from newspaper or to a cocoa husk or a straw kind of substrate to allow certain animals to burrow, shed out properly. It's just all enrichment, like these difference in changes in substrates, in textures, in smells, and everything else. So these are vital items that just changing simple things can make a massive difference.
But Ross, you can't keep them on cocoa because they get infections. Didn't you know that?
I know. Sorry, guys. Just keep them on. Just keep them on cedar pine, and pine.
Cedar pine only.
Sorry,
keep them on cedar and pine.
just had to bring them up.
So we'll hit all the cliches. So when you're in Thailand, what species? You said you were working mainly with Naja Kuthia and Kuthia, depending on where you live.
Yeah.
I know I'm probably wrong, but
that's a first.
Yeah. Kauthia is another one I've heard people say. Kuthia.
Yeah.
Kauthia. Yeah. There's loads of people say it loads of different ways. So you said you worked with wild wild specimens obviously in the snake part and such forth. Was there any other animals? Did you get to work with kings with Omorphagus or somebody please help me out there?
What
on your own there?
Ophiophagus?
Ophiophagus, that's it. Yeah.
I'm dreading pronouncing these names in English right now.
I think we're all in the same boat.
So
it's okay. We'll just get corrected by somebody who knows a lot more than we do.
Yeah.
So it'll be fine.
I know how to write them. Just noting that. Yeah, I did work a lot with Naja Kauthia. They have tons of them down there at the snake farm. Obviously, I worked with lots of non-venomous species like Tuas, Mucosa, Coros, different python, Burmese python, reticulated pythons, rat snakes, different kind of rat snakes. Yeah, and the venomous, they were the most fun. So, of course, also lots of Trimerosaurus albulabris. Tons of different Trimerosaurus complex species. So, of the albulabris complex, different, specimen they do DNA test with to conclude whether they're separate species already or still in the albulabris species. And yeah, tons of Trimerosaurus and the Bungarus were the most fun.
Bungarus, yeah.
Yeah, for a long time that was my favorite genus. Yeah.
I would love Bungarus, but captivity, there's nobody keeping them alive. Like nobody breeding them, nobody really keeping them alive long term.
But are they somewhere in Europe? I don't even know people who keep them.
They had Bungarus LSTM for a while, but after Russell Viper by quite a few years back, we had to get rid of them. Then I think we got them back when the director changed, and then we just haven't had them in since. But it'd be lovely to have some Bungarus in again.
Yeah,
and, get to work with them. I think they'd be great fun.
I do too. That's one, especially Bungarus fasciatus. That's my favorite species, Bungarus species. Although they're not the most, they're yellow and black. Also yellow, white, yellow, black. Yeah, but that would be my preferred Bungarus species. Maybe someday.
Maybe we can get some going in Europe. I won't be involved in that. I'm happy to not have any snake feeding animals. But yeah, say for Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, Bungarus, with the current work that you're doing, Bungarus wouldn't really make sense. Obviously you've got prime real estate at your place. You need what's needed for research. So for you guys, it wouldn't really make much sense, would it? To be honest,
it might come up for the kind of if we start doing a lot more work on Indian species or kind of the Indian subcontinent, we might end up with some. But currently, because we focus so much on sub-Saharan Africa, the main focus and the snakes we're getting in are basically all African species. So yeah, at the moment it wouldn't make sense for a Saprondaris, but in the future, you never know.
Yeah, in India they're a big problem, right? What
Yeah,
is the
definitely.
species? Caeruleus?
Ceruleus, Bondaris ceruleus. Yeah, they're one of the big four.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I think Ben Owens and did a photo shoot with them, going into they did basically a night, an average Indian home
Yeah,
at night, with somebody obviously with the dummy sleeping on the floor, and they just basically released the snake under the door with
and
cameras
yeah,
in the room and effectively let it go round, and it's surprising that the snake obviously doesn't want to bite it, but when somebody's asleep in bed and they sleep on the floor, so instantly you've got more chance of coming into contact. Obviously,
Yeah.
I know that snakes are incredible climbers. Every single species of snake I've ever seen, really, really good climbers. But if you're on a bed or in a hammock or something not on the floor, at least they've got to stretch that span of space to get to you. And the reality is, if the scent trails for the food are all on the floor, they're not going to go upwards. They're going to try and follow the scent trail for the rats and the mice and stuff on the floor.
one of the big
Or the
things
snakes
that
on the floor.
one of the big things being pushed is for people to sleep under a mosquito net. Now that works in more than just a snake bite way, but even a simple mosquito net will help against mosquito bites, insect bites, but it stops the traits kind of getting underneath and on like around the sleeping person. So it's simple things like that. Just using mosquito nets that we're trying to get to be a more common kind of, not behavior, but more common in kind of Indian homes as a way.
Well, and African homes. Like this is
African
just for
homes as
Indian,
well.
like African homes as well. Like a lot of people in Africa sleep the very similar way, or the exact same way. They sleep on the floor, and they get bitten by species in Africa because of being sleeping on the floor. As you say, that mosquito net that costs somebody in the UK or somebody in a third world country, in a first world country, Western country, it costs them pennies.
Yep.
Could save a life, not just from a snake bite, but from malaria. It will help the fight against malaria and other diseases that mosquitoes carry.
Yeah,
as well.
definitely.
Like it can go to help in a lot of different ways.
A lot of kind of the snake bite initiatives is just going around the idea of not making it solely. Sorry, my dog's climbing all over me. Not making it.
I was wondering what that noise was.
Today they decided to use me as a climbing frame. So a lot of the projects that are being done across the world, they're not focused just on snakebite. They're looking at other kind of issues that are found in these areas. So kind of using the mosquito net, if you can start implementing that, then you're stopping the spread of other vector-borne diseases as well as snakebite. So if you can tag it onto other issues that are quite common in these areas, you're killing two birds with one stone effectively. So it's these little practices that are being done that really are more than just about snakebite. It is saving lives in more than one way. And I'm sure we'll hear a lot more from other guests about it, but a lot of the work is not just based on snakebite because there's just not the support for snakebite. A lot of people in Western countries aren't aware of the sheer numbers of people dying or being maimed a year, the crisis that is snakebite. So if you kind of tag it along with, if we put mosquito nets for malaria, and through that, there's also the less of a risk of a snake biting someone in their sleep, they're more likely to engage in it because it's doing more than just stopping snakes. So as we get more guests on who work in kind of snakebite initiatives, I'm sure they'll be able to go into more detail in how it's going down in the field.
Well, this is the reason why we're doing this as a podcast, I think, and I think this is something we all feel quite strongly about. Is there little things like this that we, as people, can get involved, as keepers, get involved in, that helps the snakebite initiatives around the world that helps people save lives. Because, as you say, I could donate £5 a month. I could buy three, maybe 5, maybe less mosquito nets. If it's even one mosquito net, how many members of a family could live under a mosquito net? Sleep under a mosquito net? 4 or 5, maybe. But that's 4 or 5 lives, preventable snake bites that could happen.
Yeah,
And you've saved it. And I think that's definitely, for me, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, is because I wanted to highlight this research that's going on, these initiatives that's going on, and actually how not just me, but how other people can get involved in this and help. And it's that simple. It's helping.
A lot of it, like, you can't get involved with anti-venom production. You can't get involved in a lot of it. But it's just little things like education programs. If it's, for example, sharing something on Facebook and you know you've got friends in a certain area. And it's just simple things. So like the thing you were saying about Ben Owens with the picture and the demonstration of how the snake goes into a room and how the snake interacts with kind of the dummy on the floor and stuff. If you get people to see this, it's a lot easier with the visualization of saying, like, look, the snake will go directly to your bed. You're a warm body. If you tell people this without showing them anything, they might not take it kind of seriously. They might think, oh yeah, I might remember that. But if you show it as it happens this easily, people are going to be more aware and it will be shared more readily as such. So all this extra kind of work being done by snakebite initiatives and other organizations around the world is invaluable, and tying it into other kind of diseases, neglected tropical diseases, really does help, because it's then not focusing all the spending on one area. So if say you want to support malaria, but it also saves a life from snakebite, you can't really complain that, oh, I already paid for malaria. You still save a life. So it really does help, especially with the kind of spreading of information.
No, I fully agree. And obviously what this podcast will hopefully do will spread that information, or at least tell people how to do it. And I think this is the same when you could say this, something very similar about papers and articles. Some people just don't read papers and articles. It doesn't matter what they say if they're really interested in it. But because there is such a view that the academic world is so disconnected to not just the venomous community, but the reptile community as a whole, that people truly believe that that they're not going to read a paper because they're not going to learn anything from it, or if they are, it's going to be so disconnected to what they're doing. They don't. So having something like this, other outlets as well, like that demonstration on that Ben Owens and his company did, and that those, as you say, show people that actually, or tell people actually, this paper may say this, but this is how in real world, how it can affect you, or how it can affect this person, or how we can do something about it. And
how easily it happens. It is not.
That's the big one. How easily this happens.
I think one of the big disconnects is, it won't happen to me. Or you just need to change this or that. It's not that simple. I mean, they're living animals. If you ever work with animals, you'll very quickly know that you can make the best laid plans. It doesn't mean that animals don't play ball at all. So
not at all. Not at all. And I think all you got to think of is you got to think of these people who are putting their lives on the line daily or weekly or monthly or whatever they're doing to be able to supply venom for anti-venom production, or doing research with venoms and such like that. It's a dangerous job, but it's worth it if you know that job is saving people's lives. And as you say, in sub-Saharan Africa alone, there could be over 100,000 deaths a year. Is 100,000 deaths in total a year? And below, I'm a bit high on those 40,000.
Yeah, I think you're a bit high on there. I mean, India is about 4 to 6,000, and that's the highest. But worldwide, we're talking 132, 138-ish thousand people dying a year.
So that little bit of difference you make or that little bit of where I was going with that was the little bit of danger that you have up front, like working in the job that you do, is the amount of people's lives that could save. Really is worth these people like yourselves doing that work and understanding, and people understanding that, yeah, you've got a really cool job, you work with loads of cool species, you work with really cool people, you get to intermingle with people that I can only dream of, that Tim can only dream of, and stuff.
I do.
And but you're in a privileged position, but you are risking your life every day for other people's lives to be saved.
With kind of following that on, LSTM developed with the Nigerian Ministry of Health Etitabg for Echis bites. So the venom extracted at LSTM went on to produce that alongside Micropharm and the Ministry of Health in Nigeria. And Paul it's estimated, I mean, this is a bit old now, it might have changed. It was estimated that he's created about 20,000 vials of this antivenom. And that could easily be 15,000 people's lives saved as a direct result of the venom that Paul's extracted. So it's things like that make it worth it, because you are saving countless lives. We'll never know. We'll never meet these people, but just the knowledge that the work that we've done has gone on to kind of save that many lives, even if it was a hobby for us, or it is a hobby for us. It's nice knowing that, yeah, we might be risking our lives every day, but in the bigger picture, my one life might go on to save thousands more. And that kind of helps put a lot into perspective.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And I think there's other things as well that, like, LSTM aren't just studying venoms from and other facilities aren't studying venoms from an anti-venom standpoint or venom effect standpoint. They are looking at other things. Other research centres are looking at how venoms of snakes, lizards, inverts can be used in the medical field and helping people save human lives with other disease. There's thousands of venomous reptiles out there, venomous species of animal out there. Because obviously there's venomous mammals as well, of venomous species out there.
Yes.
But there are so many toxins and proteins and everything else that sits within those venoms that we just don't know anything about, or we don't know actually what they could do to save a human life. Like, obviously there's, I can't remember what it is the breast cancer drug that's from an animal toxin. Is it some scorpion? I can't remember. Somebody's now going to message the page and message the podcast and tell me that I'm incorrect. But there's other things that other people have done that with venomous research. But there's still somebody that was at the end of that milked that animal, that risked their life to be able to give that venom to be able to have the research done on it. And I've kind of lost my train of thought, if I'm perfectly honest, but it's big.
There's always someone at the sharp end.
Like me last time.
It's easily done, isn't it, with when you do it?
Is, yeah.
You get going. But yeah, saying it's just take my hat off to everybody who does it. I would say I'd love to do it, but I'm not sure I could do what you guys do.
There's always someone at the sharp end, and what makes it kind of bearable is the fact that it's going on to help more people, a bigger picture. And certainly that's for me and Paul. We've got a massive love for the job we do, the opportunities we get, but it is all about the bigger picture. You always get, I certainly have had loads of people saying they're jealous of my job and they'd love to do it. And yeah, I mean, I do think the job's amazing. But it is not about the interaction with the snakes. It's about the bigger picture, what the work leads on to.
I also think people are slightly disillusioned on what actually you and Paul do, as regards, especially the UK public. There's obviously there's a couple of UK groups that I really enjoy being a member of, and you'll always get people saying, "Oh, I'd love your job. I'd love your job." I just don't think people realise exactly what's involved and what you do. And
Unfortunately, I'm not just playing with snakes all day, every day. And there are times when I do miss the fact that I can't just get a snake out and play with it, because they're not pets. They are research animals. They're there for a purpose. And I've said it to you guys, like on a Friday afternoon, well, I'd love to get the annulifera out, just have a play around with it, but it's not really my job or what I do. Like, I've got to have a reason to do it. I can't just get a snake out for the sake of getting a snake out. So, if, say, the annulifera needs doing on a Friday afternoon, then I'll try and leave it till last second and have a bit more of a play with it. But it's still a research animal. It's not my pet. And there's a lot more behind the scenes than just venom extractions. So today, Paul and I did some extractions. But tomorrow we'll be feeding. Monday we were just doing husbandry. We've got a lot of kind of admin work to do over the next few weeks, and sorting out the herpetarium. So it is a case of there's a lot more going on. For example, I do the preclinical work alongside the professors and doctors and stuff in my department, and a lot of people don't realise that we do that as well. So there's a lot more to the kind of LSTM and the research of venomous animals than just playing with snakes. Don't get me wrong, we do love doing that.
This is what people don't realise as well, is actually how much of not necessarily of an academic background, but you've got to have some form of academic understanding and such forth to do your job. It's not just an animal husbandry job. It's not. You've got to understand why you're doing it, what you're doing, why you're doing it, what the effects of those animals, the venom of those animals can have on you, have on other people. And as you say, you're doing preclinical work. You're also doing a lot of data-based analysis of on certain species and such forth as well. And there's people always say, "Oh yeah, I applied for LSTM, I maybe didn't get the job because I'd be really good at it. I was told I'd be really good at it, but I just wasn't right." But I don't think people sometimes realise that they weren't right because they didn't have that academic understanding. They didn't have that little bit about them that could be able to give them that step up in that role that you're in and that opportunity that you're in, as much as anything. It's a massive opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. I know for a fact that the people that applied for the job that I went for, there was 136, I think, all for my one job. So there's huge competition, and there was people with degrees from Bangor in herpetology. There was all sorts. People who've been working with venomous for years. But I was one of the few, if the only one, who had some venomous experience and preclinical experience. So I had 2 years preclinical experience, which is quite hard to find. It's quite a novel thing to have on a CV. So that was a big factor in it, because it was an animal technician job, and that involves a lot of preclinical work. And it does play a big factor in all these different elements of the job. It's not just, I can work with snakes. I've worked with snakes for 10 years. I've worked with venomous snakes for 20 years. It's not just about handling snakes. You need to be able to do all the background work behind it for the maintenance of the collection, because it is a large collection. We currently have 168, I think it is now, 168 snakes. So we've got a huge collection to maintain, and that involves kind of feeding records, monitoring the stocking levels of the herpetarium, making sure that the venom we've extracted is for a project that's going on or something like that, and working alongside the departments. So today we've had some IgG being freeze-dried. That's for some of our department, but we also have to monitor and make sure that's done properly. So it is a lot more than just playing with snakes. And I mean, I'd love to be able to turn around and say, yeah, it's this wonderland where I'm just playing with snakes all day, but it's not.
Well, I think that brings us into quite a good segue, actually, and to talk about how actually you got into venomous snakes and handling venomous snakes and stuff, and your history and the work you did leading up to where you got the job at LSTM, because there's obviously quite a lot of work that you've actually done before that. So
I went to South Africa for 2 months and volunteered at a reptile sanctuary. when I was 18. 18? Yeah, 18 or 19. I can never remember just which. It's around then. Um, so I was out in South Africa I stayed at the sanctuary for just over 6 weeks. And then I was in Johannesburg for a few days beforehand and went to a music festival at the end, extended my stay for a bit longer for this music festival and stuff. So I had a fantastic time in the country. I fell in love with it and I'd love to go back. But I went initially, as Tim was saying, how he got into it. I didn't really have that keen an interest in snakes. I liked them. I thought they were really interesting, but my big interest was crocodilians. I was fascinated by crocodiles and
understandable, yeah.
And stuff. And initially, I'd wanted to go to the Madras Crocodile Bank in India. So I sent out some emails for volunteering, and at the same time, I was looking for other volunteering with reptile ideas. And the sanctuary in South Africa came up, so I sent an application out there. And the South African place, Kim Younger, they replied first. So I followed it up and went out there. They had some crocodiles and alligators and stuff. But it was also venomous snakes, normal, non-venomous, lizards, and doing call outs to the local area. So I was like, yeah, I'll turn up out there. I'd had maybe 50 hours max of handling royal pythons and corn snakes, the odd rat snake, working with a dodgy iguana. Nothing
the dangerous stuff, yeah.
Yeah. I felt very out of my depth at some point. So this is the first time I ever traveled on my own. I ended up in Johannesburg, 18. I think I was 18. Ended up in the middle of Johannesburg, just oh, okay, I'll wander around on my own, see a couple of things. Had a 6-hour drive out into the middle of nowhere in South Africa. And the instructions were just wait at the wimpy and some guys would turn up. So, and I was waiting at this wimpy, really out of my comfort zone, lost, not sure what's happening. Must have looked like I stood out like a sore thumb, just waiting. And then these two guys walked over. Chris, who had this big bushy ginger beard, really happy, smiling, bouncing along. I was like, come on then. And got into the van and he was like, oh, you can sit in the front. We've got a spitting cobra in the back we've just done a rescue from. I was like, oh, all right. So turned up at this sanctuary, had a look around, did all this stuff. And then the next day it's like, yeah, just turn up at 8:30 and we'll start. Okay, so going around the collection, doing some non-venomous handling. They had, at the sanctuary, they didn't breed anything. It was just people's pets and stuff that they'd given up. So they had western diamondbacks, they had anacondas, they had all sorts of alligators, snapping turtles, really weird stuff in the middle of South Africa. So got used to working with them, started using tools because I'd never used hooks or grabs or anything like that. And they got me using grab sticks and practicing on eggs so I could feel the pressure and the amount of force you needed to control the egg without breaking it. So got better with that, did 2-ish weeks of non-venomous handling just to see how I was around them. One afternoon they were just come on then. Went and saw Chris. There were 3 boxes. First was a snouted cobra and he was like, this is how you handle it, there you go. The next was a puff adder. This is how you handle it, there you go. Then it was a boomslang, this is how you handle it, there you go. And that was my introduction to venomous handling.
The third one was the best. Yeah.
The boomslangs in South Africa were amazing. So docile.
There's just actually out of all of them, Cameroon locality where they got the green with the black edge on the scale. Oh
yeah.
They
are beautiful snakes. They are amazing snakes, and I loved working with them. And from then on, you had a week where you did it your venomous handling with another curator just to make sure you were safe, and then let loose. So I think it was about 2 weeks after I'd done my first handling, I was working with some angusticeps and green mambas. Another 2 weeks later, I was handling my first black mambas, which was, looking back, from what I know now, of the species I was working with and stuff, I didn't know much about what I was letting myself into, and definitely had a weird introduction to venomous.
But I also think
a bit like Tim's.
I think when if we go back on that a little bit, but like from obviously the first ever episode, we discussed it while we were sounding like we were in a washing machine, but we did discuss it. There's a perception of certain species in the hobby that actually, when you go into those areas in the wild, they may not have the same the same view, or they may, or as you say, people in the hobby think one thing, and actually what you know, and from your own animals is different. Like obviously, black mambas, polylepis. It's just, you think about it. Everybody in South Africa or in Africa scared of them, really scared of them. Because of that, people in the hobby then become scared of them. Then actually, there's a lot of people.
The easiest mamba to handle.
Yeah, and a lot of people say actually they're the easiest mamba or dendroaspis to handle.
Definitely.
But there's still that stigma that they are big, fast, and dangerous, because they are big, fast, and dangerous. But you tell me one venomous reptile that isn't big, fast, and dangerous.
You put it in the wrong position, and it will show you what you can do. Yeah.
Anything's dangerous. And as it says on the start of Viper Keeper's videos, the most dangerous animal is the one that just bit you. Doesn't matter what it is. If you're in a bite situation, doesn't matter what it is. Still in a bite situation. Every animal we own majority animals we own is dangerous. They are dangerous.
Yeah.
So having these views in the hobby that you shouldn't have this species, that species, or the other species sometimes isn't necessarily correct to the rest of the world, if that makes sense.
Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying go out and get a black mamba.
No, neither am I.
You're a novice at all.
No, I'm not either. I'm just saying
they are an advanced species, but they have a stigma around them that doesn't always need to be there, if that's the right way to say it. Yeah, they are a dangerous animal. Yeah, they've got the potential to seriously ruin your day, week, month, life, however you want to see it. But having a fear and a stigma around them doesn't help, because then it leads to these situations where someone might turn around like, oh, I can't handle that because it's a black mamba. Now, I don't really handle outside. Well, I don't handle outside of work, and in work I'm in a very secure facility. So if something does go wrong, it's not a problem. It's a different case in kind of people's private hobby and stuff. Like for me, Paul and I both kind of acknowledge that we are in probably one of the best places in the world to be bitten. Simply for the fact of our location with the Royal Hospital a minute away, all the anti-venoms on store. We've got some of the best snakebite doctors in the world. We have their direct numbers. So for us, we kind of are in the best place to be bitten.
And obviously we've discussed that in the first episode. Again, we discussed it about actually thinking about if you're going to private keep, thinking about the position of where your private collection is to where your nearest antivenom store is, where your nearest emergency hospital is, and stuff, and who the doctors are. And sometimes you could even put it down to what is your resource to the professionals, the experts in these situations. What's your relationship like with them? Not necessarily what's your relationship like with them, but how easily are they identifiable to the people that are trying to obviously help you, so that they can get the correct help to keep you alive and such forth. That's where it comes down to really good bite protocols. As regards to saying initial care for the paramedic that comes to you or the ambulance service that comes to you, tells them basically if you're bitten by this species that you're keeping, that they need to, that this is a kind of a rough guideline of what they need to do to keep you in a comfortable position, get you to the experts. And the experts that are going to be able to do it.
Situations. But then again, in South Africa, I think the nearest hospital to the sanctuary was an hour and a half away. So, I mean, the more I look back at it, the more I'm like, I took a lot of risks that I wasn't aware of. And,
but also within South Africa, though, for an African country has got probably the best stock of antivenom. They've got the best
they've got
infrastructure. They make all their own antivenoms and stuff there as well. So they are, for a sub-Saharan African country,
very well.
They are very well prepared.
But there is still the issue of kind of hospitals not being close by, not having the stocks, not having the money.
It's a massive country. It's bigger than people think. Maps make it look quite small. It's not as small as people realise.
No, it's huge.
But then you've got to look at it as, in that situation, is it a case of the treatment of the bites from doctor to doctor? What's their resource? And it's the same anywhere you go, obviously. But that's one of the biggest issues they have. And from speaking to South African people that have been bitten there and stuff, they say is one of the biggest issues that they have there isn't necessarily the stock of antivenom or where that stock of antivenom is. Again, they'll airlift it, they'll get it to you, they'll keep you alive until you can get you the antivenom. It's actually the treatment on how they get you to keep you alive. It is you still do vasectomies and fasciotomies even.
Vasectomy? I don't know what kind of snake bites you're having.
Kids anymore.
Rare after effect of a bite.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm dreading as well here in European countries. When you get bitten by your exotic pet venomous snake, you go to the ER, and then there are doctors who've never even heard of the snake, who don't even know what kind of antivenoms there are. That's kind of what I'm dreading if I ever get bitten.
It's completely understandable, and I mean, again, I'm in a very lucky position to have the resources that I've got available if I have a bite.
Yeah.
I mean, we just press a panic alarm and everyone else deals with it for us. So that is fantastic for us.
Yeah. So
but for private keepers, like you said there, you don't know what doctor's going to treat you. You don't know how it's going to pan out. You don't know kind of further from getting to a hospital. You don't really know what's happening next.
Yeah.
And that's something we see all over Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, a lot in a lot of countries with a lot of bites. The treatment varies so much, let alone in European countries where there aren't bites. And doctors won't be trained for snake bite, say in Switzerland, in the UK.
A lot of doctors and paramedics and ambulance services won't see a bite in their working lifetime. Some will, and some won't. But this is the thing, is where we need specific people to be highlighted. That in a bite situation in the UK, they call the poison line, or I can't remember.
Toxbase.
Toxbase. They phone Toxbase. Toxbase gives them Toxbase effectively tells them what to do, what they need, what to do. And I'd assume that I would hope that there is a similar system in every country that effectively all the doctors have got to do is ring one place and they will get the correct people to help them.
Yeah, in Switzerland we have that too. Yeah, toxinfo.ch.
Toxinfo, yeah. Yeah, Toxbase is the equivalent that only clinicians and NHS staff can really use. But it's a fantastic resource for them to have, because it is a case of, someone's been bitten by this snake, and they can then get in contact with all the right people, all the stocking areas and the treatment. So it's fantastic to have these resources, but kind of when you look further afield, none of that support's there.
So Toxbase is just for clinicians, right?
Yeah,
so you can look at certain statistics and such forth online, and the website is live for anybody. It's not. It doesn't even look like does have Toxbase in it. Well, you can get on it through toxbase.org, and then that takes you to the NPIS website, which is the National Poison Information Service.
Okay.
And then on there you can see that actually, from a consultant referral, in 2017, there's only about 2,000 times it's been referred to. A consultant has referred to it.
Yeah.
So if you look at it from that point of view that actually it's not widely used. If you think about how many people have a poisoning of some sort, if that you don't know,
sure,
it's easy to get poisoned by a chemical that's in bleach, for instance. You might get some form of poisoning there, or something, and the doctor may only treat one or two. May only treat one or two of those cases in their career, so they don't remember what to do, or they may not necessarily not remember what to do, but it might be the first time that they've treated somebody in that way. So they phone up the line, and actually it says here for telephone inquiries, 2016 to 2017, there was actually only about 200 to 300 telephone inquiries into the Talkspace system.
That's not a lot, yeah.
So it's not referred to a lot. However, does it save people's lives? Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Definitely.
It's a fantastic resource that when it's needed, it's there. And by the sounds of it, you've got another similar system in Switzerland. Again, I'm assuming you've got a bit more control over what you can see compared to what we can.
Yeah. So I don't know. You can't actually see more or have more access, but yeah, you have more access. So even private people can phone the Tox info if they're concerned about something. So you
can. So I'm reading here. Actually, this is something I didn't know. So I'm actually being a Google hero and actually on there now.
Good.
But actually, you can phone it. There is so it's classed as primary care if it's from the user. So around about telephone inquiries from primary user, it can be up to around about 20% of people will phone it, because you can phone it through for the standard 111, which is an emergency number in the UK. You can phone it and get connected to Talkspace through 111 if you need help. So,
yes, similar in Switzerland, yeah.
So, and they can give you effectively primary care before the ambulance comes, and actually hospitals tend to use it more online than they do on telephone inquiries. Up to around about 60% is actually done online for hospitals, whereas primary care it's below 5%. So, as you can. Well, a lot low below is probably around about the 1-3% mark. Well, it actually says here 2.1. No, that's a reduction. Sorry. But it says people phone it for the case of taking too many paracetamol. What do they do? Too many aspirin, too many ibuprofen. What do people do? But they don't necessarily phone it for obviously a snake bite situation. It wouldn't be something that I did in a snake bite situation. I wouldn't phone for an ambulance and phone Talkspace and be like, yeah, I've been bitten by okay, Menage a Trois. What do I do? I wouldn't phone it for that instance. And a lot of people, if they've got severe poisoning or severe toxic an intake of something that is toxic, the reality of them phoning for primary care on that number is very low. They run phone 999, get the ambulance on the way to you, then highlight to somebody else who is in the know that you have been bitten. Like, for instance, I think we had this conversation when I visited you and Paul, Ed, the other week, where we said that actually once the ambulance on the way, if you then chose to ring, for instance, Paul Rowley, he can help set everything off. He can get in contact with the right people for
within
you.
Reasons. That's
within
the thing.
a reason, yeah. So he may be able to say, if you phone him and you've been bitten, he may be able to get maybe highlight to somebody who is the person who the hospital needs to be in contact with. Oh, this person's been bitten by this species and he's going to this hospital, so they know it's coming.
Yeah, there's all these possibilities, and even calling 999, they might ask you to stay on the phone during it, and then they can consult Talkspace through that, and they can give you advice that way. There's lots of different options, but again, it's down to individuals' protocols.
Yeah, right.
Know all of the different aspects of it.
How much time you got, anaphylaxis,
all of this.
blood pressure drop and you're just out in a minute.
There's so many different possibilities.
So we're going to have Graham Skinner on the show in a couple of weeks, and I think that's going to be quite interesting to talk to Graham about how his bite went down, because he suffered. It turns out he has a venom allergy. He got he was force feeding a Crotalasenyo, and he actually slipped, and only one fang it didn't even go into his finger. It actually just scratched his finger, and within about 2 minutes he was unconscious on the floor from anaphylaxis. So he actually is rather lucky to be alive in general.
Definitely is, yeah.
But like that, as I say, that kind of thing is you may not think about that, but it's up to the keeper to have epinephrine or salbutamol to keep the airways, to try and fight an allergic reaction, with the adrenaline, and or the salbutamol to keep the airways open to keep you alive. It's up to
I think adrenaline does both for you.
No, it does as well. It does, yeah. But obviously, with the use of salbutamol is obviously used for people who suffer from asthma and asthma attacks.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
so
it's selected for the adrenal receptors in the bronchioli. Do I say that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
But adrenaline does also act on them. So, I think to remember that you have both, right? An EpiPen and salbutamol, right?
I personally do, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think you don't do anything wrong with that. Just I think
it's good to have it as a safety.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm in a position, and I'm sure Ross is kind of in the same position as me, where you said you have a venom sensitivity to, is it wrinkles or spitting cobras?
Well, I actually think it's not from the last couple of days. This is maybe a little bit of a long-winded story, but the last couple of days, so I've actually started to react from what I believe is thin air, because my hands have now, I'm struggling with the skin on my hands now, but it started where I got some hematitis venom on my hands, and then my hands went all dried and cracked and red and sore.
Yeah, I saw the pictures. It was really horrible, right?
Yeah, it was really, really... really uncomfortable, but after 6 hours, the redness had eased. Still, obviously, cracked skin and sore. So that developed over 6 hours, and then the next 6 hours, the redness was completely gone, but the skin was still quite cracked and sore. And then after 3 days of using just hand cream, just to try and get moisture back into my skin, and to do that, it actually improved. And it actually got a lot better. But I personally do suffer so I have quite sensitive skin anyway. So I do suffer from, but not usually on my hands, usually on obviously I suffer from eczema. So it's on the back of my legs. I have a patch on one of my arms, on my forearm, which that can get quite dry in the winter only, weirdly enough. But with my hands, and then the same day I had, just before I got venom on my hand, actually, I had a pair of latex gloves on, and I took them off because I was having to pin the animal to remove an eye cap. So obviously I took the gloves off.
Yeah.
For better control. Obviously latex gloves, they're thin, they can slip around. You don't really want that like added factor of
sure
within that process. So I took them off and I'm sat there, and obviously as I released the animal spat at me, went onto my hand, went onto my clothes, put the animal away, my hand then came up. So today actually, the other day I had some latex gloves on. I was working with the Naya Mozambica, and it spat a few times, but I obviously had gloves on. So I thought, I'm not going to have a reaction. Took the gloves off, the same thing happened. And then today, I was on a factory tour for the company I work for, has an engine business and, has loads of different businesses, but we primarily make diesel engines for commercial vehicles. And I was walking around the factory and I was doing something. I was looking at a process, and it was an oily process, so I asked for a pair of latex gloves, or disposable gloves, put the latex gloves on the way home. It took about an hour and a half to come on, but on the way home, the same thing happened again. So I'm now thinking, is it something to do
latex
with...
allergy? Yeah.
I'm not necessarily sure if latex allergy or the powder that they put onto the gloves to make the gloves easy to put on and off.
You have powder gloves.
So they're a glove that's got so all our latex gloves that I've been using, obviously, because the ones I use for home aren't the same as the ones I use for work, but they've got effectively like a talcum powder inside. There's a powder that helps you get them on and off.
I've always used powder free.
So I'm not sure if it's even the powder. I don't know.
Could be. I don't remember correctly, but I think it even has something to do with asthma development. So no latex allergy. So the incidence of latex allergies declined after they stopped selling powdered latex gloves. There is definitely a connection between them. So maybe it's possible that you have some reaction to the powdered gloves.
But obviously, from that standpoint, when you've got venom on your hand, it's natural to think that it's a venom effect.
Yeah, definitely.
Not a secondary effect of something else. And I think that's something that we all do when we're in that situation. You get a little bit of venom on you, or something goes slightly wrong, and you get a pain in your leg after you've been in your room. You just the animal's been on the floor, and it's been nowhere near your legs. But then later on you think
question
to yourself, what? My leg hurts. Oh, was I bitten? It's like the animal's actually nowhere near you, but you just straight away, a little bit of hypochondria comes in, and you're just like,
I think everybody knows that, right?
It's the finding the scratch afterwards. That's the one that gets me.
Yeah, and you're just like, was that a fang, or was that from Was it from me just catching myself on the going through that door, or was it from Joel? Is it from that piece of paper? You just don't know, do you? So it obviously goes around in your head. But obviously, because it happened the first time it happened to me, I'd been wearing the gloves for ages and ages and ages, and I never had a reaction. Then all of a sudden, I got venom on my hand, and I had a reaction. And then there was no change in glove manufacturer. There was no change in gloves. There was nothing, and I just had that reaction, and it was out of the blue. And then I got rid of spitters, and I actually carried on wearing the gloves, but my hands didn't really do much after. They didn't react as sometimes they'd be itchy and stuff the day after and stuff. But I'd just be like, it's just my sensitive skin. It's my sensitive skin. But it's only recently, the last couple of months, I've actually been thinking, is it something else? But we're getting very off topic for us.
We do.
A venomous snake-based podcast. I like the technology of one of the hosts. So we're probably best to go back. But I do think it... Yes?
Ross, on a side note, when we were at the Hemagatus, have you ever tried pinning it while it's playing dead? I've never had so much trouble pinning a snake as with the Hemagatus when it plays dead.
Oh, my male just... As soon as you put the jig... So I use a jigger like they do at Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine. I sometimes use a method where you back it out the tube. For certain species, for smaller species, I find that that works better for me. Other species I use, I don't use the back of the hook, I use a jigger. Like they do, maybe we can, Ed can release a video after the podcast, this podcast is released, actually showing the technique that Paul uses at Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, because I think it's good to show handling techniques to everybody anyway. But you use the jigger just across the back of the head, and you get your position, you set yourself up nice and firmly, you get a good grip. Yeah, as soon as you put the jigger on, rolls over, acts dead, feigns death. It's just like for the male cows, it's just like, oh no.
I think
because you can't pin it in the normal place because the body's around, and as soon as you release the jigger, it's just going to spin round in your hand, and the body's going to spin. You're going to panic. Something's going to happen. So you kind of have to shift it round at the same time as pinning is.
Yeah, it's so annoying. I tried, it always wanted to turn on the back, and the head wanted to turn on the back with such force that I could not keep it between my fingers. So I just let it go, and then it was there on its back, tongue out, and you won. Okay, you can go back now.
Surprisingly strong animals as well, actually.
While playing dead,
the thing that shocked me most, especially since I started at RTM and started handling all the range of snakes, the sheer strength they've got, everything. Like, you might think, yeah, vipers, they're quite strong. Some of the elapids are crazy. The Waltonesiae that we've got,
I had to mention
that thing,
Cool.
that thing is unbelievably strong. It's stocky.
Yeah.
It's short and stocky, but when you've got it, if it wants to start struggling, you can hold on. But that's all you can do. You can hold on and just kind of let it do its thing until it stops. And yeah, the sheer strength is something that needs to be respected.
Definitely,
for sure.
Yeah, I got the same thing with my bothrops. They're extremely strong. That's
it's surprising sometimes.
Yeah, the one snake in my collection I do not want to pin. Or or
I don't think anyone wants to pin a bothrops optionally.
They will throw fangs through bottom
it's
drawers.
It's not so much fun, yeah.
I'd say your two are getting, well, if you've got two species but a pair of one and one of another. I'm not too sure.
What?
Do you have two species?
Yes, right. Asper and the Mugini.
With the Mugini, you have you have a pair.
No, it's two females.
Two females.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have they're getting big now as well. Like that's a very scary snake in general. They're a very scary snake.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people elapids are scary, but I always find with elapids, whenever I handle like what people say, and I will say as well, are big, fast, strong elapids. It's just you go slow and steady. They go slow and steady with you. There's a bit of an understanding there that you're not going to hurt them, they're not going to hurt you, and you kind of, except for a few select species, and you kind of slow and steady wins the race. But with big bothrops and big Crotalus as well, like holy moly, like the power in that they've got, and they won't move for you, and they won't do what you want them to do.
They have such a reach. It's incredible. Like they're in a we can use centimeters, right? 1.70 m enclosure. They were laying on the one end, and I was manipulating something on the other end, and within a blink of an eye, they were near my hand. It was the scariest thing I've experienced with venomous snakes so far.
Yeah, vipers. I'm definitely an elapid fan. Me,
so fast.
I feel like you can reason with an elapid a lot more than you can with a viper, and you can read the body language a lot more.
Yeah,
so,
especially with Nash, I feel pretty comfortable. They're so predictable with the hooding and behavior.
You say that
in general.
In general, so there is obviously there's some species that just aren't like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
The Philippinensis that you've got, that's a bit of a nutter, isn't it? The one that's at Liverpool School Tropical Medicine.
That
doesn't look like it cooperates very well at any point in time.
Oh, it's just gobby. That's all. It's just all gob. It'll act all bolshy and stuff, but when you get it out, it doesn't really do much. I mean, compare it to some of the forest cobras we've got. We did the extractions on them today. We were very lucky to be able to pin the big Ugandan straight away. Normally, it gives us a runaround, so we managed to pin that one. And I mean, originally it started out that we were only going to do 3 Cayuthia this morning and just remove some stuck shed on them. And then Paul kind of was in the mood to carry on, so then we ended up carrying on doing more. So I thought then, we just do a Siamensis, it'll be fine. And our Siamensis, he had some stuck shed as well. I think it's about 24 or 25 years old. It's an old animal. So we had it out, did an extraction, and then he was like, the Ugandan forest cobra's in shed, and it had a little bit around its head. This is making it sound like we have a lot of stuck shed. LSTM. In the room that those animals are kept in, the humidifier is playing up, so we're having to use backup portable humidifiers and stuff. So at the moment, it's a bit of a problem, but this is one of the joys of working in a large collection. We're waiting for that to be fixed. So we pulled out the Ugandan forest cobra and managed to pin it straight away. And then it was a case of, we might as well do the Jameson Eye Kaimosa because, we need that venom. So it started off doing 3 snakes and just kept expanding. I didn't really know where it was going to stop. So we're getting ready to do the Kaimosa, and he shows me another pot that says the another Melaneutra Cameroonian. I'm like, oh, okay, we're doing that as well. So in the end, we ended up doing 7 snakes. But we were very lucky today to be able to get the Ugandan pinned straight away. And I know you guys have seen the video of the Kayamosa.
Yeah,
He was not
a
playing
snake
ball.
I wanted to pin, yeah.
The Cameroonian Melaneutra subfolver, sorry, we did after.
Oh, nearly.
Very nearly, but I saved it. That snake just went nuts, and your typical Naya that shows it up. Some of them, like all the other cobras, they weren't striking with mouths open. They weren't presenting mouths open. They were just kind of huffy and puffy. And then the last one, if you had a chance, you would have. I think, yeah, it definitely is on the day when you're working with cobras and assessing all the individual signs, the body language. So, but as you say, you can usually tell beforehand what a cobra is going to do, with a few exceptions like forests and stuff.
The crazy spitters.
Yeah, the crazy spitters, but typically they're very easy to work out what's happening and work around. Working with big vipers, though, you can't read them. They just strike at really random points. And I mean, puff adders are quite easy to work with in the sense you can tell what's happening. I'm sure you can agree, Tim, with your bitis. Like, they're quite easy to work out what's happening.
I also want to just put a little bit of an amendment in there. From my personal point of view, I still don't think bitis are a great beginner's venomous species.
Oh, no way. No.
They are seen as, like, a lot of people are. I want gabonica, I want rhinoceros. They want gaboons. That's what they want in venomous snakes. I don't think people realise that, yes, they may be effectively a stagnant species. They don't move much. But
when they want to move,
they
shift.
They go. And it's like a landmine.
Yeah,
it's a landmine.
I just had that a few days ago when I was feeding one of mine, a rhinoceros, and I was startling it, with the rat in its mouth, and it jumped from one end of the enclosure to the other one, and I've never seen a bitis move so fast, and I was really shocked that it could move. I knew they could move fast, but
honestly, I would say some of the speeds I've seen some of the snakes move, it would rival mambas easily. When they want to shift and they're determined to, they will fly. And it's the same with
very short distance, but
but that short distance, if you're not prepared for that,
definitely,
they're just shot and they're just at your feet.
This is something that when you get into venomous, a lot of people don't consider is their natural working space in their room. And that being able to shift in a small distance, in the wild, a small distance may be 100 foot or 50 meters to get themselves away from a predator or a human or a dangerous situation. They may be able to shift themselves 50 meters or 40 meters, 20 meters, 10 meters really quickly. The average room is not that big. So when they want to shift that distance for their natural flight range that every reptile has, your room is still not going to be that size. Yeah. So at some point it's either going to come towards you or it's going to go across your room faster than you can you realise what it's going to do. So it's going to run, and you're just stood there going, actually, well, what's happened? Well, where's that gone? And it's being prepared for that situation, and it's having species that work within that room that you've got. I personally can't have big species. Anything over 6 foot is a no-go for me. I've had species that are over 6 foot for very short periods of time before. Well, I've only had one species over 6 foot, luckily, but for a very small species period of time, it was only a matter of a couple of weeks, and I realised actually I couldn't do it. It was unsafe in my room. If that snake, and it was a Naya Haji as well, so like they are a little bit aggy anyway. They're a little bit aggressive.
A little bit aggy.
They always it it was a Moroccan locality, so what used to be Legionis. So like, and they gape, they come forward, they're an angry. I'd say they're an angry species for a Naya anyway. They seem a little bit more testy for. Well, I think that whole complex is quite testy anyway. But
Yeah.
But it was just too big for the space I had. It was a 7 foot. Well, it's actually been measured now since it's over 6 foot, but it's in between 6 foot and 6'2" kind of range. But for my room, that was too big. So I took that point. That was about a year ago that I had that, and I took that point in my head. Then is I will not get an animal over that size because in my room it would be too big. But if I was to have a viper species, that size wouldn't be that size; it'd be smaller. With an elapid, as you say, kind of they are naturally longer. They are faster in general movement, but they have a bit more of not necessarily predictability, but they're a bit slightly easier to read as regards to what they're going to do next compared to a lot of viper species. So I wouldn't naturally have viper species anyway, because I don't really particularly like many viper species. But
yeah, you're a little bit biased in that point.
I mean, I'm kind of the same.
What?
Elapid people.
Oh.
Well, actually,
scum of the reptile world.
Scum. Oh. Yeah, he's colubrids.
If I could just had to keep one family, it'd be colubrids. I'd keep colubrids, venomous colubrids. But yeah, so you've made me lose my train of thought. But yeah, but saying like in my room, I couldn't necessarily keep big vipers because that flight distance, that strike distance, makes it an issue. Because I've got a small room.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to admit I've made a few mistakes with some of the species I've kept. I've realised what my mistakes are and my limitations are of what's available to me, and I've gone, actually, I need to move an animal on for it to be safe. For me and the animal, it's better for me and the animal. So to move it on to somebody who has the space to be able to work with that animal. And a lot of people have got bigger rooms than me. I've got a small room. I can only have a set number of animals. I've only got a set number of enclosures because that's all I can fit. But yeah, I think that's one thing when you get into venomous, keeping a venomous species, is you need to understand your limitations as regards to your room and what's available to you space-wise as well. You work in space, especially people who are like, oh, I want a gaboon, but I'm going to keep it in a room where I've got 25, 30 enclosures, each with 2 animals in. So I've got 60 animals. I'll give the gaboon maybe a 3 foot, 2 foot. So trying to work that back into centimeters.
Do that, please. Yeah. What is that, like 120?
No, smaller 120.
90 by
90. Yeah, it is 90, 40, 90, 60, 60.
Yeah, something like that.
You keep something in that kind of size, 90, 60, 60 size, and then, but that's okay when it's in there. But then in the working space in the room, it's only 2 meters by a meter wide. Straight away, your working space isn't big enough for a lot of species.
It's finding that limitation of what you can do. I mean, I'm talking from a position where I've got a purpose-built facility. We are limited on space, but our procedure room is huge. To the point that I know that Paul has said it could be seen as too big because you have to move to lean stuff against a wall. But we've got this lovely open space, which is fantastic for big elapids. And dealing with vipers, you can just put them in the middle of the room and let them do their thing. They can strike at you, but there's so much space behind you, you're fine. But a lot of private keepers, they don't have the ability to have that space dedicated for that one purpose. Like you're saying, like Russ has just said, he doesn't have the space for these bigger snakes, so he knows his own limitations. And that, yeah, it might end up meaning you can't own a king if that's what you want, a king cobra or something like that. But at the end of the day, it's your life on the line. You've got to find that that give and take. And if it is a case of you can only keep small, maybe if it is only like Aspidiblat species, and you get enough enjoyment out of that, but you know someone you can go to work with who's got better space.
Just saying, there's nothing wrong with a lot of the smaller species.
Oh, I love Aspidiblats, me. If I was to
same, I love
get venomous,
obviously a Lapsoidea.
yeah.
Also, you've got other smaller species. There's a lot of Vipera species. Obviously, Vipera don't get very big, and they're great captives. Really interesting, really active captive species.
I mean, even down to your Cerastes and your Bitis Atropos and stuff. You can have all your little small ones. You can still have your Bitis. And we had an Atropos at LSTM when I started, and I loved that little guy. I really did. Every day, like, we'd have to check on him because he was in a different room to have a temperature drop at night and stuff. I really loved that little snake, and I think some of the smaller species are underrated. So,
definitely, yeah.
So stuff like Aspidiblats, I don't personally own any venomous at home. I probably won't end up with a DWA because of the work I do anyway. There's like not really a need to come home to more venomous. It'd be never ending. I like kind of coming home and not having to worry about venomous. But if I did, I'd probably end up with stuff like Aspidiblats, little species, just enjoyable ones to keep instead of the bigger species. For me personally, I think they're fantastic little snakes, and the smaller species can be brilliant, especially in size limitations.
I fully agree. I fully agree. And again, we've gone obviously massively off topic. We've gone to quite a lot of into private keeping tonight compared to what we probably will do in the future. Well, not necessarily we will do in the future, but kind of what this podcast was originally for. But I think it's good to get these experiences from private keeping and kind of share these experiences, because if somebody learns something from something we're saying, it makes it fully worthwhile for everybody else.
Definitely.
And it also meant that we've been able to discuss our private collections, our private experiences as well, especially for me and Tim. Obviously, me and Tim are both private keepers. Obviously, compared to Ed, who obviously works in research and academia. So, like, it gives us a chance to tell people actually what we keep and kind of how we're keeping it and our experiences around that. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing this early on into the podcast series for us to do that. So something that we've mentioned as well. We've mentioned in today's podcast is about milking of venomous snakes, and we will put a video on after this podcast is released onto the page. So if you haven't liked the page yet, please like the page on Facebook. It's obviously Word on the Snakebine podcast, and we going to put a video of the Ed's taken of him and Paul milking a snake to show actually a technique that they use to pin an animal. So when you come to milk a snake, Ed, at Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, is there a set of steps and procedures that you have to take into account? Kind of what are you doing as regards to what happens to the venom after the venom has been extracted? Do you massage the glands? Kind of, can you walk us through the process a little bit so we can kind of understand as a group of people kind of actually the danger involved as well as what actually happens?
Well, I mean, I can give it a go. So if we use a cobra, for example, so Naya caifia, what we'll do is we'll move the animal. Typically, it's in its trap box, or we'll move the rub that they live in into the prep room, into the big procedure room. And if it's the bigger species, so the caifia, we'll pin it on the floor. So we've got some foam mats that we use, and there's always two people to do extractions. So you've got the assistant, which is the job I take, and I'm starting to train into doing the actual extractions myself. And then Paul will take the sharp end, as such. So we'll prepare the room. We've got a large range of petri dishes and other glassware that we use. And as you mentioned earlier, you can put different kind of layers or barrier. So stuff like Echis, we don't put barrier on, but that's because you need to be able to hook the fangs over the end. When we're doing a lot of the elapids with the smaller fangs, we typically use parafilm, which is it's a material that's quite stretchy, very thin, easy to break. So it just gives them a membrane to bite through. And that helps with kind of releasing venom. And then on the viper species, we'll typically use a nylon ripstock, which is a thicker material. Again, so they've got something to bite through and there's more force behind it. So when they do bite, it doesn't completely rip, but it allows them to have something to bite through. And we found that helps quite a lot in increasing yields. Now, when we do the procedure, it's typically Paul and myself extracting, and we'll make sure that everything's set up. So we've got the dish has the identifier for the snake, the date, and it's all secured into our clamp. And then we start the procedure. So we get the animal out of its enclosure or the trap box, and Paul and I will both have a jigger and our hooks. We manipulate the snake into the direction Paul wants to pin it, and so that it's on the mat, so it's not pinned directly onto the floor, so it's got a bit of a softer surface. The jigger will go down, and then we use a second jigger. This is assuming the animal's behaving, which doesn't always happen, and it can be a bit of a dance around the room trying to get it into position. So once the jiggers are down, typically what happens is we'll use two jiggers, one further down the neck and one directly behind the head. Then Paul will reach in, so he'll pass one of the jiggers to me and keep hold of the other. At this point, he hasn't got a hook, so I'll be holding the hook and a jigger. And then Paul goes in, picks up the snake, says that he's secure. We put the tools down. He'll carry on with one hand holding the head, and then I'll pick up the rest of the body with two hands. We walk over to the side where the clamp is, and then we move the snake towards the clamp. Paul tends to do it at a slight angle, a slight downward angle, so that the snake then bites over the lip. Now, other people do it in other methods, but this is how I know Paul does it. The snake bites on, and Paul will then massage the glands. So he uses his spare hand to massage the glands. When we feel we've got enough from the extraction, we'll remove the snake, which sometimes is easier said than done, especially, I think it was a haji we had, that it was playing dead as it was biting and clamped down, so we had to kind of use a tool to get the mouth off, but the snake was still playing dead. Again, it doesn't always go to plan when they start doing that. So we'll make sure we've got that. Paul then holds the snake while I'll move all the tools into the right place and make sure the cage is ready. So at this point, Paul is holding the head and the snake. And then when he goes to release it, it will either be in front of the trap box or ready to go into the box. He'll have his jigger and his hook beside him, releases the snake, and that's when I'll step in with my hook to make sure that he's covered while he moves away, because that's the most vulnerable part between letting go and making sure he's got enough safe distance between him and the snake, because they don't always like being extracted, and sometimes they pull back, they'll fly towards people. And then the snake's returned to its home cage, and from there we make sure it's all secured. Put another layer of parafilm over the top of the dish so that it's completely sealed, and then put it directly into the freezer. We leave it to freeze overnight, and then the next day we'll put it into the lyophilizer, the freeze drying machine, until it's dried down into a powder. And then that is weighed out and can be stored indefinitely. And yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sorry, I thought Tim was about to talk, so I was just like, oh, Tim's come off mute, he's about to talk.
Yeah, no, nothing to add.
I think
yeah.
that was a really good description. I think people don't realise, they see like videos, but they don't realise actually what's involved in it, really. I think
definitely one thing to say is they have a lot of what we do is done off body language, off the feel of the snake. So we've had quite a few people comment when they're watching. So at LSTM we've got to our procedure room, we've got a big glass window that people can look through and watch us work with snakes, do extractions. Because it is a big attraction within the straw. It's a big selling point. So we do get regularly people stopping and watching us do stuff with the snakes. Now, I forgot what my point was.
I don't know either. Do
Yeah,
you
so
charge them for
no,
watching?
we should do, but we don't.
Yeah, you should.
So people have commented that Paul and I look very calm while we're doing it, and we do have, especially when we're doing Ekis or something like that, when we've got nearly 50 to extract from. After you do the first kind of 2 or 3, it's just the same old. So we'll have a joke behind the screen, we'll have a chat, and people have said you're so calm, you're just having a chat, kind of having a laugh about it. But a lot of what we're doing is based off the body language, off the feel of the snake, and especially at Paul's end when he's holding the neck, a lot of what he's feeling is the muscle tone, how the muscles reacting, and that way we can judge how the snake's going to behave. So there is a lot more going on than just picking up the snake and holding it.
I think maybe if we, in a couple of episodes' time, or, well, maybe a little bit longer, but maybe if we can get Paul to agree to come on to dial in, and maybe Paul we can talk about this in a lot more detail, because I think
certainly
Paul will be able to explain this a lot better than obviously we can. Obviously you can explain it a lot better than me and Tim, but then, as you've said, you've never actually been on the pointy end, on the end that's taken the venom extractions yet. That is going to happen. It's part of your plan to be able to do that, and the plan in the university for you to be able to do that. But it's Paul will be able to explain it in a lot better way than you can, and he'll also be able to obviously describe the dangers and describe obviously the things and the protocols that go into place to do it. Be able to do it in the first place a lot better as well.
Definitely.
And I think maybe if we can get him on, or at least ask him to come on, he may be able to explain that in a little bit more detail. And there's other people that hopefully will be coming onto the show that have done this for quite a while. They milk snakes themselves. They know the protocols of their facilities and stuff that they work in, and they may be able to explain it in a different way to Paul as well, because they might do something slightly different. I think a lot of this is like when you pin in an animal, it's a very personal thing to the person.
It is very personal.
It. The way Paul does it might not be the way you do it. The way that you do it may not be the way I do it. It may not be the way Tim does it. It may not be the way.
It's whatever you're comfortable with.
It's whatever you're comfortable with as a person, and I think that kind of that's one thing that people need to realise, especially when they're new into venomous, that just because
there
it's
is
the
no
way
right way of doing it.
It's not the right. There is no right way. It's what's safe for you and how you do something to keep you safe.
One of the things that when I first started at LSTM, Paul said to me was, "This is the way I do it. It's not the way you have to do it. This is the way I'll do it, and I'll show you why I do it this way." And he explained it that way, and it led up to the kind of like I'd never used hooks for a lapids, and he said, "Well, I do it this way because I find this is easier." And now I haven't used grabs in over a year. So that is a case of I will do it this way, and this is how I'm comfortable, but this doesn't mean you have to copy me. And that's one big thing that, especially for beginners, just because someone does it that way doesn't mean you need to do it that way.
And this is one thing I'll always tell somebody who wants to get into this field, who wants to get into private keeping of venomous snakes and stuff, is that handle with as many people that will allow you to handle with them. Learn other people's techniques.
Ask as many questions as you can.
Ask as many questions as you can and figure out what works for you. When I started handling venomous, I did a venomous handling course, which I thoroughly enjoyed, got lots of information from it. Loved the day. I did the House of Venom, the House of Venom course with Alex Jays. Loved it. Really, really nice guy, really knowledgeable guy. But there was a few techniques in there that necessarily didn't work for me. So I then handled with varying other private keepers, The main one being for me was Andrew Dolby. He's a local person to me. He's a local keeper. Keeps a lot of Crotalus species, but he had techniques that I found worked better for me in certain areas. But I still use some of the techniques I learned the first time round. But then I've also handled with other private keepers, and every time I handle with somebody new, I try and look at what they do and see if I can implement that myself. Like when I was at Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine and I saw you and Paul handling, there was something Paul did that I thought to myself instantly, kind of, actually, I don't naturally do it that way, but I might find it easier to do it that way. So next time I handled some of my animals, I gave it a little bit. It was just something that he did when he was transferring a cobra from one box to another. And it just instantly just kind of, it didn't necessarily work for me, but it made something that's not that I don't find it easy. Sometimes cobras just don't want to go in boxes, but it instantly kind of the cobra just went straight in.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, that technique wasn't natural to me, but it seemed
it
more
got
natural.
You thinking about your own
the way I
implement
do it. Yeah. The way I do it, and I think when you're new to this, before you get a license or before you want to become own venomous, handle with a lot of people, talk to a lot of people, understand what the limitations of doing it, and what the dangers of doing it are, and also what the positives of doing it are. I have many positives from owning venomous reptiles, many positives, and I enjoy them. But at the same time, it's not for everybody. It's not.
Yeah, definitely. The other point is, it is perfectly all right to turn around and say, you know what, I've given it a shot and it's not for me. That is one 100%. Thing that I don't think is seen enough in the hobby. I'm in a very lucky position with my job and my experience, but at the same time, I mean, I feel like I picked it up quite quickly, quite easily, without having any serious issues. But at the same time, I do feel like if I'm out of my depth, I can turn around and say to Paul, "Oh, right, can you sort this out? Oh, Paul, can you just come and sort this out? I'm just about to do this snake. Can you make sure you're around?"
And I think if you're a private keeper, speaking to a lot of private keepers, especially around the areas that you live, that's a big thing. Like the first time I ever had to pin my own snake at home to remove an eye cap, I had Andrew, because he lives not far away, come to my house on a weekend. I'd purposely left the snake. I had him come to my house, and I did it with him there, removed the eye cap with him there, just so that I had some form of backup, a backup handler, or something went wrong with me or with the snake I was bitten or something like that. There was just somebody there just to build confidence. And this is the thing, is I think there's a big thing in the UK, and I know this is probably the same for you as well in Switzerland, Tim, and especially I know Nick's mentioned it before as well, in Holland, that a lot of the older keepers are very reluctant to give new keepers handling time or to invite them into their homes to do handling because of the risks involved. But also I think it's a good thing doing that, because you learn from showing other people techniques and stepping back and kind of going, actually, while I'm teaching this person, I've just realised that actually there's probably a safer way to do that. Or there's probably a way that might work better for me because I've just seen them do something slightly different and it looked like it worked for them. So it can just sometimes be, and that's one thing I've been probably quite open with letting people come to my house and teaching people not necessarily teaching people to handle, but people who could already handle and helping them achieve what they wanted to achieve. And I've learned from doing that. But there's very few people that will do it. And I think people need to remember that they've had help to get to where they are. And to get
helping is one of the big things that needs to happen in the hobby, is people realizing that it's okay to ask for help. Don't ever put yourself in a bad position.
And it's also okay to help people who have asked.
Yeah.
And who are asking. I'm not saying let every man and his dog or every woman and his dog into your collection. I'm not saying that. And it's a personal thing. I'm just saying, if somebody asks you, and they're really serious, and they've maybe have done a handling course at Wrigley's, Exoteach, House of Venom, or they've got a lot of snake, a lot of
If
snake
there's a passion
experience.
there,
There's
it
a
will show.
passion there, and you get on with the person, and you like the person, then helping them out to handle venomous snakes, or they're in the process of getting their license, they just need a little bit more tuition, or they just need a little bit more help, like offering that help out and actually helping that person. It's a great feeling. For one, you know that person's, it puts you at a little bit of ease of mind as well, because you know that person's maybe you thought before was a little bit reckless or a little bit unsafe, and now they leave you and they're safer and stuff. And it's a great feeling. You get a relationship with somebody over it that's second to none. Like you'll admit with your mentoring off Paul, because that's what it is. It is mentoring as well as training. Yours and Paul's relationship is great, because you look to him for help, and now he's in a position where he looks to you for help as well.
Yeah.
And
so one of the things that shows really well is how Paul and I work together in extractions.
yeah.
As you were saying, kind of, you need to be able to get on with the person. That is one of the big things that works really well with Paul and I, is that we do have a good relationship, a good working relationship. I personally wouldn't say that he's a mentor to me, and I'm sure he wouldn't say the same, but he has helped me a lot, and he's definitely allowed me to see a new way of keeping. And Paul, I'm sure, would agree with me on this, that it's not in a typical mentor way. Like, he has shown me new techniques, but it's never been over my shoulder. He lets me get on with a lot of stuff, and if I need the help, he's always there as that kind of backstop. Now, to kind of follow that bit on, the first time I was left alone in the herpetarium for 3 days, because Paul, just a little bit of background, Paul doesn't take holidays. Paul is, I think it was 6 years now that he's had where he's not had a holiday. So he's very dedicated to the work he does. He had to go to a conference in Leiden. So he was away for 2 or 3 days. So I was left with the herpetarium on my own. Now, I'm sure both of you can agree. It's all good. You can be very confident when you've got someone who's just around the corner that can help you. As soon as you're on your own
Definitely.
handling, it's a very different experience. And
Yeah,
I think I was doing one of the androsticeps, which for me at this point, the androsticeps is quite a normal, routine bit of husbandry I do. The first one that came out, it was playing up a bit, and suddenly it was this very real kind of, almost like a bomb dropped, that shit, I'm on my own. There's no one else who can handle snakes at this point. That snake and me, that's it. I've got to do this. And suddenly it's a massive thought process change. It's a massive realization that losing that kind of backup does change things. And it is something you have to take into consideration when you've got your own private collection. And that leads back to, don't be afraid to ask for help. If you don't feel comfortable, don't do it, and wait until you've got more information. And it is something that, like you were saying, when the first time you had to remove an eye shed, you got the person that you've done a lot of handling with, that you're comfortable with, to be there just in case. And I don't know the rest of the story, but I'm assuming it all went really well, and you managed to get the eye cap off, and no issues.
I'm still alive now, and I've not had a bite in them.
So, but you turned around in a situation where you weren't comfortable with it, and you asked for the help, and it went a lot smoother. If you didn't have that help, you might not have achieved the same outcome. So it is taking stock of what you can do and not being afraid to ask for help. That's the big thing.
And I think that's probably a good place to leave this podcast. I think that's a good note to leave this podcast on. Is that being safe and part of being safe is being able to ask for help. And I think maybe we will have a bit more of a podcast on handling techniques and such forth, because I think this all relates. And I think this all relates back, and I think this is how this podcast is probably naturally going to work. We're probably going to have a guest. Every other podcast will be the host talking, and we'll cover subjects like this and husbandry and other bits and pieces. And then the other, within the venomous hobby, obviously, and then obviously the other episodes will have a guest on, and we will discuss obviously more research-based topics. Obviously, I know we've discussed it as well today, but we'll discuss snakebite initiatives, the work that they are doing, and it'll be a lot more formal than these kind of what we'll call probably breakout sessions, which kind of talk about things a little bit more generalist as well. And I think that's a good way to go, and I think it's a good note to leave this podcast on, is that being safe and asking for help is part of being safe, and I think people need to help and also ask for help when they need to.
There's nothing to be ashamed of. I ask for help constantly at work sometimes. It's definitely nothing to be ashamed of.
No, I fully agree. And so I think we'll leave it there. And I'd just like to thank everybody for hopefully joining us again. And I hope you've enjoyed a little bit more of an informal based podcast. And please let us know if you enjoy this type of podcast a little bit more, so we can obviously tailor podcasts to a few more for our listeners. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody for joining again. Just repeating myself, but that's all right. And so bye, guys.
See ya.
Bye bye.